Everyone wants those high, powerful kicks, but most people make one huge mistake. They focus on flexibility only and forget the fundamentals that actually create power. In this video, I'll show you how to kick high with power step by step, so you can go from struggling with head kicks to snapping them out with confidence. Now, contrary to popular belief, high kicks are not just about lifting your leg in the air, and they start from the ground up, from the technical foundation. And developing power is based upon three core principles, which are balance, hip rotation, and core control. So I've mentioned this in some of my other videos before, is that many people can kick well when they're kicking low, because quite frankly, it's easy. But then as they start to go higher and higher, their technique falls apart, when in reality, a good kick, especially a side-to-side kick like a turning kick or a hook kick, whichever height it's executed at, should look relatively similar. Now, what a lot of people do is they start low really well, the kick comes in, slices from the side, but then as it goes up, it starts to become more angled like this, and then by the time they're at their maximum kicking height, which would be like a head kick, it's completely lost all power and momentum. So these are the things that I really want to address in this video to help you guys out. Now, the mistake many people fall into is they think that flexibility is the problem, why they can't kick high, and why their kicks lack that kind of refined look, that powerful and snappy look. And obviously flexibility is really important, but in fact, it's actually not the most fundamental component. And the reason for that is that when somebody performs a really well executed kick, flexibility is the thing that's most on show. You know, like the person is stretched out in this really wide position. They may even be doing like almost a split standing on one leg or something like that. But really, in order to do that, you need to get all of these elements working together. And it's these things that don't appear as obvious on the surface that are almost more important than flexibility. Now, all of the different elements that go into making your kicks the way you want them, basically sharp, explosive, and powerful, all could be put under the umbrella of technique, but they work within different areas of our biomechanics in order to produce that desired result. And I'm going to give you loads of different pointers of things you can work on in this video to develop those areas. And if you stick around throughout the video, I'm going to be demonstrating a really simple drill that can be done anywhere and that you can implement today to unlock more power, height, and control in your kicks. So the first area that we're going to address today is our balance, and I'm going to show you a couple of different things that you can do to sort of test where you're at with this. And this basically involves our hip rotation and also core stability, because it's actually the core that allows us to stay on balance, you know, strengthen the core, keeping ourselves nice and locked in to keep our muscles stable. Now, the first and most simple thing that you can do is just stand on one leg like this, keeping your eyes forward. It sounds so basic, right? But if you can't do this for at least 30 seconds without having to look at your foot, or if you're all over the place like this, don't even bother trying to kick high, because you're just not going to be able to do it. You simply haven't even got the stability to stand completely motionless within the core and the leg. So how do you think you're going to be able to do it kicking at somebody's head height? The next stage of that is performing a very slow rotation of the hip. And the reason we do this is essentially we are slowing down in order to speed up. So if you can do a movement really well slowly when, you know, those forces are against you and you haven't got momentum to kind of carry you through it, which a lot of people do, they can only perform really fast, then you haven't really got that technique. And we want to be able to do it slow. And then when we put the speed and power in, it just happens in the same way, right? And so the next thing that you can do, which immediately ups the level of difficulty, but is brilliant to practice to get used to it, and you'll really feel this in the muscles, is from that basic position that we assumed at the beginning where we're just balancing looking forwards, we start to very slowly rotate ourselves and turn our hips over by pivoting on the standing foot into, say, a turning kicking position like this. And then you want to hold that from there. Now, if you're not used to this, you're really going to feel it back here and in areas like your obliques and stuff like that. And like I said, we're slowing down to speed up. So if you can perform something that slow, just imagine how burnt into your muscle memory it's going to be when you wish to just snap that kick out at full speed and power. You'll be able to see when I decide to just get myself into that position to execute the kick quickly, or even the full kick, you see how easily it happens because I've got that control at slower speeds. Now, you'd never be able to execute a kick like that if turning into it and stuff, I was all over the place like this. So you really have to start from the ground up and build it from there. Now, the last part of this, as I mentioned, is the core stability. And just by virtue of practicing drills like that and executing your kicks very slowly, that core stability and the strength in the core will develop. But if you want to boost that even more, you could say I would recommend doing some core exercises. If you're quite advanced, do the gymnastic ones that I've demonstrated many times on the channel from the hollow body. But even in just the last video, I demonstrated quite a beginner-friendly exercise, which was the plank to the push-up, which is great for core stability, and then that should really help with that as well. Now in this section, we're going to talk about how to increase the height of our kicks in a safe manner, because most people try and force flexibility, and this is where you get pulls and tears and injuries and stuff. And if you pull a groin, for instance, or a hip flexor, it can put you out of action for weeks. And so by trying to force it and skip everything, you know, create shortcuts for yourself, you're actually knocking yourself back if you get an injury. So make sure you increase it incrementally. And so instead of trying to force yourself to kick high when you're really not ready to do so, think instead about increasing your dynamic range. Now there's different types of flexibility. A lot of old school, traditional schools focus upon static flexibility, which I think is actually quite an outdated approach, and I've never really done that. I only do a bit of static like in the evenings or after I've trained. It's always been about the dynamic flexibility for me. You know, like we're talking about our leg swings and stuff like that, which I'm going to demonstrate in a minute, because when somebody becomes so flexible, they often lose power in the kicks, because it's not just about flexibility. You don't want to just be able to put your leg in the air, but the kick is floppy and has got no snap to it. That's a huge problem. And this stuff is really so easy to develop. You don't have to even do it in a focused training session either. What I'd recommend is just the good old-fashioned dynamic leg swings, where you start in your stance, you take the back leg, you swing it up in a really nice and controlled way and come back to the ground. Can you see that control? I'm not throwing the leg up and then slamming it down, or I'm not having to really use my body in this crazy way in order to get it up. It almost looks as if like my upper body and my lower body are kind of disconnected. I don't move this much when I perform the move, and the leg just goes up and down nice and easily. And then we've also got the side swings as well, where we hold onto something like the back of a chair or a wall in order to balance. And the reason we do that is so we don't have to worry about all of the other things, and we can just focus on that swing. And the way these look is I'll shift my weight down a little bit, I'll swing up from here, and we're actually swinging the leg up in the turned over position like this, like a side kick. So I'll just swing it up like this, create that nice dynamic range, and I'm building up slowly over time. Obviously I'm quite used to doing it, so it goes a bit higher straight away. But even if you can just feel it here, and you can feel that point to where you're getting like towards your maximum, that's enough. And you just have to build it up from there. Eventually you will get to there, but you're going to do yourself no favors if you're highly unflexible and you're like, right, I'm going to do it as high as Grant, then completely like pull your groin, right? So build that up over time, just swinging up. And you only need 10 to 12 repetitions on each leg. You might have to do it a couple of times, but that's really all it takes. And you'll start to feel yourself limbering up and feeling much more able and free to throw those kicks a little bit higher. And then something else to add on to this is I would train high chamber holds. So the chamber is the position that you assume before you throw a kick, so where the knee is lifted up into position, because this will train our hip flexors not to just lift and snap out. We need the strength to be able to actually hold our leg up somewhat. Again, it's up to you whether you want to do these like extended side kick holds and stuff like that a lot of demo teams do. That's never really been much of an interest to me, but it's highly beneficial to be able to lift your leg and hold it, to have that strength to where you can kind of delay a kick or something like that if you want. You don't want to have to just be able to execute it in one way. We want more control over the movement. So there's multiple ways of executing these, and I would recommend doing them from different postures and for different kicks. So if I demonstrate, say, the side kick variation at the moment, the side kick chamber is kind of like up at the front like this. Now that's from the front leg, and you can also do it from the back leg, which requires a little bit more control because we've got that rotation as well. If I show you from this way here, if I just do it from the front leg to there, and if I do it from the back leg, you can see how it requires a little bit more balance. But all of these different postures are building our control over the movement, so we've got much more options if we desire them. And the way I would train these is I would aim to lift up the chamber position, and I would hold it for about 3 seconds if you can, because you don't just want to be able to lift it and then it drops, because again, that shows weakness in the hip flexor, and we're not going to build that strength for the snap. So from there, if I was doing it on the front leg, I would lift, hold, and down. You see how I lift it up quite quickly and aggressively, and then I hold it, and then we bring down for the control from there. I'll just show you again from this direction. From here, lift and hold, and then back down again. And then I'll do another one. And you'll really start to feel this, and you'll develop that strength, because you want to try and get 90% of the kick done before you extend it. And that means you get all of the work done prior. So all there is left to do at the end is just extend and snap that kick out. And now we're going to talk about how to add some power into those kicks. So I'm sure you can see with the different fundamentals that we've built up in the video so far, why this comes at this stage and not at the beginning. If you've got no control or balance over the kick, what's the point of trying to throw it with power, as unfortunately so many people do and look quite embarrassing. So just like with everything, if we're slowing down to speed up, as we like to say, start low or start at waist height, wherever you're comfortable, right? If even when you lift your leg to here, you're falling off balance, that's too high for you, and start really low. Don't worry about it being too low. You can always build it up afterwards. Now, in order to start driving power into the kick, you want to think about not snapping from the knee, as a lot of people do. They kind of go like this, so it's all from the knee. You want to think instead of driving the hip, you know, just like when I'm talking about utilizing the kinetic chain in our punches, how we drive the hips forward and then that guides the punch. It's exactly the same with this. The snapping the knee principle is akin to just punching with the arm. So instead of just snapping the knee, you want to instead drive the hip forward. Can you see how aggressively I move my body into this position, right, in order to get that kick out? That's exactly the way that you want to do it. If I'm just doing it with the knee, I'll bring my body forward like this. You see how there's not really any hip rotation, as opposed to now if I snap that hip, you see how I really drive my whole body through, or if I do it a little bit lower, you see how I'm sort of jerking my whole body into that motion, so the kick almost happens as a result of the work that I did prior. And something else that you can do while you're learning is step in on the base leg to load it up to launch the kick forward. And this is something that a lot of styles recommend and teach, although I'm not a massive fan of it once you get to a certain level. Like I said, it's good when you're starting out, but eventually you want to just be able to get it to where you can execute the kick just from completely static with the same amount of power as if you loaded it up. But I'll just show you what that looks like anyway. I would take the lead leg and I would sort of step it, and you can almost like sidestep the target a little bit sort of off the center line from here. So you step like this kind of thing. You see how I'm sort of loading the weight onto this leg, and then it makes opening that hip a little bit easier. So you would essentially step out like this, and then you can drive that kick forward, and it makes everything a little bit easier while you're learning. But like I mentioned, use that as a learning tool, but don't get too reliant on it, because it is telegraphed. Obviously, if I'm doing it towards the camera every time I kick, if I have to kind of come across like this, you're going to know what I'm doing. So you want to work eventually up to where you don't actually need to do that, and then you can just execute the kick from static and snap it out that way. And to summarize this section, right, power is really about timing, speed, and rotation of the hip. So if your body moves as one unit as opposed to being disjointed, then your kick explodes even if it's not at the full height. And so as promised then at the beginning of the video, I'm going to give you a very short routine now. And if you do this once a day for 2 weeks, I promise you, if you're consistent with it and you really apply yourself, your kicks will improve very quickly. And the reason for that is a lot of the muscles that we're targeting here, we don't use very often. So all it takes is a little bit of stimulus to strengthen them quickly. And so the first one is just the 30-second balance and hold on each leg, literally standing up like this, looking forwards. Or if you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with that, you can do that very slow rotation. But if you start to wobble and fall off balance, just start again. The next part of the routine is 30 seconds of the dynamic leg swings, and I would do those both front and sides on both legs. After that, you want to repeat for 30 seconds the high chamber hold, so that was from our fighting stance here. Lift the leg up, hold for about 3 seconds and put it down in a nice controlled manner. And for the last part of this routine, for 1 minute, you want to perform some really slow and controlled kicks, but keep flow in them. So don't be robotic to where you're moving like this. Still make it fluid, as if you're, you know, performing the kick, but just do it nice and slowly. Don't worry about snapping it out or being too robotic. And the way I would train that is how I personally learned to do this type of stuff, which is in a very kind of like traditional martial arts sense. So we're not thinking about shadow boxing, moving around with our footwork and stuff, because that's just going to add more variables to it. We want to focus on the base of the technique. So I would stand static in a stance like they do in taekwondo and karate classes, and I would just perform the kicks from there. So if I was doing a turning kick, slowly with flow, it would look like this. I would just stand here, I'd do the rep like that, I would come down, and then I would perform one from the other leg, come down, and then I would just keep going that way. So can you see how I'm keeping nice and controlled? So when I want to do them fast, that control is there, but I'm not robotic and stilted, so it's kind of like realistic, and then we can just speed it up. So as you can see, these drills are just simple, controlled, and they're based upon the fundamentals, and you don't have to be crazy flexible like somebody like Van Damme or some of these other people. You just need that control, and you need to know what you're doing so that you can execute the kicks how you desire. So I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. High kicks are not magic. They're just built through solid fundamentals. It's just mechanics of the body. But we obviously need to know how to put those in action to get the desired result. It's also really important to set your expectations right from the outset. This stuff is going to take a lot of time to develop, especially to get it to the level that you probably wish it to be like some of the guys in the movies or that you've seen in fights and stuff like that. We use the legs way less than we use the arms. We have much dexterity in our hands and stuff from things like writing and all the other tasks we do. But for most people, the only way we use our legs is really to walk and run and sometimes occasionally jump. So you've got to be able to expect that the legs are not going to have that control that we've got of the hands, and that's why they take even longer to develop. They're bigger muscles, they're much more cumbersome, but you can get there if you put the work in. And one thing I'm always saying in my videos is that a lot of people have told me that they never learn any of this type of stuff in martial arts classes, and they go to those classes obviously expecting to get this knowledge, and they come away just as clueless as when they went. So if you found this video useful, then please let me know, because one of my aims in making this content is to bring this knowledge that I think should be taught in schools but often isn't, and that kind of baffles me a little bit. So I've sort of made it my mission to share this stuff with you guys and help you all out. So we're building real fundamentals here, guys. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video.